questions, I'll open the floor for the questions. If you're asking a question, please raise your hand so I can see you, and please tell us your name and which organization or college you're coming from. And your question, if it is directed to Hamza, please mention that. If it is directed to Michael, please mention that. If it is directed to both of them, please mention that too. Please speak loud and clear. Questions? 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll take 4 questions at a time, please. Okay.
I'm Salam Abubakar. I'm from DCU.
Okay.
Just a question on, like, in terms of reality and a dream. What if we're in a dream?
Okay, good question. Well, is it for both of them?
It's specifically John.
Hamza, okay.
Oh, I have multiple questions. Try and limit it. Well, actually, in essence, I only have 2, but I'll stick to 1. Thank you first for both of you coming, talking. I'm pro-atheist at the moment, so leave it at that, unless there's, as you said, evidence produced. But my question is that I'm going to attack your baseline, saying at least one aspect of your baseline where you attacked multiverse theory along with infinity.
Yep.
You put infinity in a sense of mathematics as an infinity plus 10, infinity minus 10, so on and so forth. However, if you look at any mathematics textbooks, the idea of infinity, even though there is a symbol for infinity for the aspects of mathematics, mathematics is like science. We're still trying to find new equations. E equals mc squared is a fairly new equation, albeit old, but still fairly new compared to our old mathematics.
Sure.
Infinity is still something we're trying to prove. Whenever you're trying to do the equations of the singularity, up till about 20 years ago, 10, 20 years ago, it was a fairly infinity existed until, of course, string theory, multiverse theory, superstring theories.
Yes.
So, all that. So, it's trying to say infinity plus 10 is like saying, what's an apple plus an orange? You can't add the two. It's impossible.
Exactly.
Infinity is a concept. It's not a number.
Yep.
Number 2, well, not number 2, in relation to that, in terms of your infinite and your idea of multiverses being infinite, you said that infinity can't exist in a finite world, therefore in this universe you can't have infinite, and within our space and time where there's a finite number of things, therefore there can't be an infinite number of things. But you also said that in space and time started 14 billion years ago with the creation of our universe, but you never actually explained before the universe where apparently this God, being immaterial, so made of nothing, existed.
Okay, question,
so therefore
say that again. I didn't get that. Say that again.
So you're trying to say that before the universe you can't have an infinite, but we ourselves, who obviously our scientific knowledge is approximately only proper scientific knowledge is less than 1,000 years old at best.
Sure.
Because you can't count it from the alchemists. Maybe they just found a periodic table.
Yep,
That's another
yep.
argument. But trying to say that there is no infinite before the universe is like saying you know something before it occurred. It's impossible. You can't say
I didn't say that, by the way.
Okay, what's the question?
In that case, then there should be an infinite number of universes. Therefore, you're infinite.
Okay, that's a different question. I'll address that.
And also, with space and time,
Yep.
space and time never existed until 14 billion years ago. Therefore, you can have an infinite number of things in this non-existential 11th dimension, which does exist.
Yep. Okay, that's fine. Very good. Can I just answer these 3 first?
No, we'll take 2 more, the 2 other 2 questions there, and then please, very quickly, your questions.
Okay, first of all, my name is Shahid from UCD. I just want to
The martyr. That's what his name means, okay?
Please.
I'm going to punish you. What's wrong with that?
I'm going to punish you.
You said that we like beheading people in the East. I mean, come on.
I'm going to punish you. Cut down your gun.
Yeah,
Please,
I'll direct this question to Michael. Basically, I remember at the start you were talking about the creation of the universe, where you said the universe was one small ball, and then you said that you don't know what existed before that because there's no scientific evidence. But recently, Stephen Hawking has just came up with this theory about the creation of the universe. In his book, The Grand Design, he says that the universe could not have come into existence without the existence of another universe. And then when you go back on this theory, Therefore, another universe could not have existed without the presence of another universe, and you can keep going back until something had to be created in the first place.
Well done.
Okay, the lady there.
We need to answer this question.
No, we'll take 4 questions.
I have 2 questions.
No, 1 question, please.
My name is Rana from RCSI. I have a question directed at Mr. Michael Magic. You said that there are things that humans used to attribute to God and say that God caused, but then science discovered that it didn't. Could you give us an example, like where humans said God caused this, but it didn't? Because I can't follow really.
Okay. Do you want to answer the 4 questions in one go, please?
Yeah, I'm going to try to do my best.
4 minutes.
I mean,
You interrupted the questioner, so I'm going to punish you with 4 minutes.
I humbly suggest that you do 1 each because I don't have that big memory to do all 4 at the same time. But that's just my human weakness.
Well, 2 are to me, in fairness.
Yeah.
2, that's fine. Reality and dream. Very good question. What's the difference between reality and dream? I think the thing that actually me and Michael may share is that we have an underlying assumption, well, especially scientific naturalism has an assumption, which is that the physical world exists. It's made of real stuff. We can't prove that. We can't. You just start with that assumption. That's why, the gospel truth of scientific naturalism is not that strong because it's based upon an assumption we can't even prove in the first place. Because how do you know your brain is not in a vat in Venus and some aliens are just making you feel what you feel? We can never prove that. So we have to have that. If we study the philosophy of science, we address this and say, well, we start with this assumption. So that's how we deal with dream of reality. With regards to mathematics, I think what you did, you proved my point. I agree. The concept doesn't make sense in the real world. It's like saying apple and pears, or whatever the case may be. So you've proved my point. There can't be an infinite regress of past events because it doesn't make sense in the real world. It's like, it doesn't make sense. It's based on axioms, conventions, in the mathematical realm of discourse. And when we study the philosophy of mathematics, you see that it's not a real thing. So how can we apply it to real things? And that's exactly my point. And to address the infinite issue, I think the Shaheed, the martyr's question, was a very good question. And it actually deals with the problem of this bloated theory of multiverses. The other point about God being infinite, and then you saying about him being immaterial, you're suggesting that there's a 4th dimension of the universe, which is time. According to physicists, that's true only in a mathematical conceptual sense. Now there's 2 views of time here, and it's going to get quite deep. There's the B theory of time and the A theory of time. You're suggesting the B theory of time, which is there is only a subjective experience of tense, past, present, and future. Whereas, according to this theory, B theory of time, everything just exists. And it's just there. So, for example, 2050 is a reality. 1800s is actually a reality now, inverted commas. So there's no relationship between events. There's no past, present, or future in reality. Now, if that's true, then time travel should be possible. Yeah? And I haven't had anyone on my door saying, take me to the future. Back to the Future. Do you remember the flux capacitor in the film? Now, the process is very conceptual. However, philosophically, we could reject that because we got greater reasons to believe in the A theory of time, which means that there are tense relationships between certain events. A happens, then there's B. There's far more greater weight philosophically to adopt that approach. So I don't have to adopt your approach. The final question, there wasn't a final question.
Yeah, it was addressed to Michael.
Oh, can I do that? No? Well, no, we can because we could both.
It was his questions.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I know, but
Yeah, okay. There's 2 questions. I'll answer the first one first, or the second one first, which was, I think it's easier to give examples of things that we once thought gods did, and now we have natural explanation. Things that we once thought that, when I say we, obviously I don't mean this generation, but people once thought that gods held up the sky to stop it from falling in on us. People once thought that gods caused thunder and lightning because they were angry. People once thought that gods and demons possessed people to cause illness. There's any number of examples that you can use of things that people once attributed to supernatural explanations that now we have natural explanations. And there are no examples going in the opposite direction that I'm aware of, and certainly if there may be one or two, it would be minimal compared to the relentless flow in the other direction, where we once thought that we had a good natural explanation and now we find it's a supernatural one. With regard to the second question, the Stephen Hawking theory, I'm not even going to pretend to be a particle physicist, but my understanding of Hawking's theory is that because at a level smaller than an atom, the particles that interact at that level interact on a different basis and different physical laws to the laws that happen when they combine together to form atoms and tables and this room and the earth and the sun. And that what he is suggesting is that at that level, particle physicists are aware that what appears to be nothing is a vacuum that has, or what appears to be a vacuum actually has potential fluctuations in energy, and that those fluctuations in energy can cause particles and antiparticles to come into being with no apparent reason and then go out of existence again. And what his argument is that this can happen any number of times because of the existence of or the law of gravity. And his argument, which I don't even pretend to understand, is that the particles borrow energy from elsewhere in the field and then pay back that energy by coming in and out of existence. Now, what he is suggesting is that in terms of the multiverse, as I understand it, is that once that happens, and it happens again and again and again and again and again, that a number of these interactions have the potential to create a universe, and that most of them don't. Most of them collapse in on themselves before the universe is generated, but that once in a very long amount of these interactions, that one of them will expand enough to generate what we currently have as the universe. But there's another aspect of what he says, which is quite confusing to most non-particle physicists, which is that rather than working forwards from the start and working out the history of the universe from then, that you start at where we are and work backwards and find that there are an infinite number of histories that our current universe has, as opposed to potentially could have. Now, a lot of these things seem very counterintuitive, just as a lot of scientific advances have seemed very counterintuitive to previous generations. And it's going to take people, it's going to take normal people of just who are involved in normal day-to-day activities and not particle physicists a long time to catch up with being able to intellectually understand that. But the peer-reviewed results of what they're doing seems to suggest that it's a very accurate measurement of what is actually happening when they apply the theory to observations of experiment.
Okay, next questions. Wow. Okay, I'm going to take 4 questions at a time. So this hand came first here, second. That lady with the purple and the blonde hair. I'm going to take the Hudayfa, and I'll take. Okay. We'll take from one question from this side. So Yusuf, question.
I just want to ask
your name.
Yusuf from PBCU, so Science Moment. The question is to Michael. With so much fine tuning on the universe, the way it's actually performed, different planets are going in orbit, and if we look from biology to chemistry to all different sciences, we see there's a whole system that is going on. What kind of criteria? What do you want to be proved to you, that you want God to prove to you that he actually exists, other than him showing himself? Also,
one question.
Hi, my name's Elizabeth. I'm studying here at UCSI. I have no particular ideology really, but my question is, it's for Hamza. In your rebuttal to Michael, when he said that there's no real evidence of God having any interference in the world. And you said that there is evidence, but we don't quite understand it, and we have to just take it on dogma that it happens. How can you use this basis and then attack the atheist dogma, as it were, that we just don't understand what happened to cause the cause that caused the universe?
Sure.
More questions to people here. I just want to ask.
Don't answer him now. You can answer him. Get him outside. Take him to Phoenix Park or to the Cliffs of Moher, anywhere.
How many people who came here and didn't believe in God or didn't have a certain ideology now consider the existence of God, or even start to consider the existence of God?
We leave that at the end.
Okay.
My question is about an argument that took a big chunk of time of tonight's debate, the argument of good versus bad. I think both debaters were assuming that good, or maybe I misunderstood, they were assuming that good and bad are universal truth. Where as a matter of fact, if good and bad were so innate, if they were fact and established, we wouldn't have debates such as the abortion debate and whether abortion is good or bad. Same applies to euthanasia and all of that. But I think from the religious perspective, and in all religions, it seems convenient that there are so many different interpretations of the same book. Same goes with Catholics and Protestants, same goes with Sunnis and Shiites, same goes with all the groups that take whatever they want out of the book and take that as fact for themselves. And then when you come to argue with any particular point, then tell you, oh, we don't believe in that the other group is wrong.
So who's your question to?
Both
of them. Okay.
Okay. Does that mean that
if you answered the three questions?
Okay. Okay, Elizabeth, with regards to how God affects the universe. See, the reason I answered it that way was because we are talking about ontology, which means the essence, existence of something, not epistemology, how we get to know how something is done. That's the scientific claim, do you see? Which is a different issue. And I'm saying, just because you don't know how someone interacts with someone else or with a personal agent, it doesn't mean that personal agent or that thing with the will doesn't exist in the first place. Do you see? So it's about existence, not about the howness or whyness or something. It's two different discussions, you see. Also, the gentleman's argument when he was talking to the rest of the audience, it's a bit of a logical fallacy to address the strength of argument by population. It's like argument by authority. If everyone in this room said that, for example, I'm an alien, does it mean I'm an alien? No, it doesn't. So it's a logical fallacy to address it that way. Well, that's fine. You could have spoke to him outside of the room, man. Good versus bad. I really agree with you. I think you brought some very interesting points here. And this is where the theist will have an issue. Because if you really think about it, if we go down Michael's route, which I'm saying maybe we shouldn't, we could discuss this. But if we do go down that route, that we take God away as an ontological, as a foundational concept for objective morality, because God is the only concept that transcends human subjectivity. If we take that away, then that means it renders morality to nothing, to being ephemeral in nature, empty, meaningless. I'll tell you why. Because so many times, Michael was saying, we agree amongst ourselves, the concept of social consensus. If social consensus becomes a foundation for moral truths, we have an issue. That means we could never condemn what happened in Nazi Germany in 1940s. Because there was a social consensus, it was okay to kill 6 million Jews. And that's a problem. Also, if we go down social consensus, we could be justifying so many different things. Philosophically, as a foundation for objective morals, it becomes problematic. Because we know societies change over time. If we read about the social modernity thesis, we know traditional values they claim can't deal with modern problems, so we change our values. So the issue is, social consensus is problematic for morality. It renders it non-objective, rather relative and subjective. And if that's the case, then that's the product of the atheist moral paradigm. This is why when you read the book by professor, philosopher J.L. Mackie, the late J.L. Mackie, his book Ethics, he actually is true to his own worldview, which is atheism, that there are no objective moral truths. So this is why I find it very funny when atheists, they can claim a moral truth objectively about religious scripture. That's really bad. You guys say that. That's really bad. You guys are backward. Why do you guys do this and why do you guys do that? And I'm like, how dare you philosophically? You're acting as if it's such an objective moral truth, as if there's an objective anchor to what you're saying. It's not. It's relative and subjective. So it's probabilistic. Do you see my point? And that's why I suggest everyone read the book Ethics from J.L. Mackie, because you come to the conclusion, if one is an atheist, then they need to be consistent with the moral paradigm. You can't be a rationalist with regards to morality, and all of a sudden you become a scientist with the existence of God. You can't have your cake and eat it from that perspective. That's why Richard Dawkins, I respect him in a certain way, because he actually says the logical implications of the scientific worldview or the atheist worldview is that there are no actual good or bad. They're not in the objective sense. And the funny thing about science is that it so wants to keep in its own paradigm. It doesn't want to go to rationalism. It doesn't want to go to any logical truths. It just sticks to that scientific naturalism. It's so erroneous that recently, and everyone could check this out, Richard Dawkins was asked about evolution, and he said, yes, there is a purposeful process in evolution. And someone asked him, well, where could that have come from? So he was scratching his head, and so clutching at intellectual straws, he said, you know what? It came from aliens. Aliens came from outer space and brought on Earth the mitochondria, or the first bacteria. Now, come on, that's metaphysical. That's almost pseudo-religious claim. So that's why I think when we're scientific naturalists, we adopt that methodology, we need to understand its limitation. I don't think Mike has understood that yet.
Okay.
Okay, the first question...
There was another question about interpretation that I could do in 5 minutes.
You did it. You went over the time.
Okay. First question is what would...
Never have a religious guy for a moderator, man. They're just dictators.
Okay, so we've one person that's changing his mind about religion. Okay, the first question was what would God have to do to convince me that he exists? And I suppose, given his record to date, appearing to people seems to be his preferred method, so appearing to me would be one. However, the fact that he seems to have appeared to so many different people and told them different things would make me think that that's an unreliable method. So I would think appearing to everybody and giving them the same message in unambiguous terms, rather than appearing to a lot of different people and giving them different messages in different languages, telling them to do different things, might be a start. Even then, I'd have to figure out ways of investigating how reliable that was, but that would be a start. The question of universal truths about good and bad, I'm not convincingly saying or definitively saying rather. I'm not definitively saying that there are universal truths about good and bad independently of our minds. I'm saying that the closest that we can get to that, and I think something that we would all intuitively agree with, is that, as Sam Harris puts it, that the worst possible world would be a world where every sentient being is suffering to the maximal extent for no reason, and that every step away from that is a step towards moral goodness, and every step towards that is a step towards moral badness. Now, I think that's something that we would all intuitively agree with, if you put aside whatever thoughts you have of the source of it. It's the closest that I think we can get to common ground on that. Now, we then obviously have to work out together how we get away from that, and there are many different ways that and different ideas that people have about that. And even then, I think that particular approach is one that is used by religious people. Although religious people kind of add into the equation the effect of what we do on suffering and flourishing in an afterlife, which non-religious people don't believe in. But the big difficulty is, because the question here is whether the idea of God is a solution to these dilemmas. And the difficulty with the idea of God's being a solution to these dilemmas is God doesn't get you out of that equation. Because what God does is it gives you things like, for example, if we take the Quran, since it has been mentioned here, you have a book that is supposed to be the Word of God that includes a lot of things that we would intuitively see as being morally good, like asking people to be good to their parents, be good to poor people, to not oppress people, to not have compulsion in religion. There are a lot of very good moral commands that we would intuitively see as very good moral commands in the Quran. Equally, there are things in the Quran that most of us intuitively, if we didn't believe that it was the word of the creator of the universe, would see intuitively as being morally bad. The suggestion that in any circumstances it is acceptable morally to beat your wife. The suggestion that in any circumstances you should cut off the hands of thieves. The suggestion that in any circumstances you should kill people for apostasy. I mean, these are things that if you didn't start off by believing that it was the word of the creator of the universe, you would intuitively think there's some things there that are good and there's some things there that are bad. And I think that's all that religion gives us, is the same mix of good and bad that we would get anyway without religion, and we still have to figure it out for ourselves.
Okay, no, hold on a second. We're running out of time. He's got a flight to catch, so I'm going to respect that. I'm going to give you...
You better.
I'm going to give you each 2 minutes to answer this question.
Okay.
Right? Is God redundant in the 21st century?
No, God is not redundant in the 21st century. We have some good reasons for that. Michael hasn't given no undercutting philosophical defeaters for any of the premises of my argument. Rather, he crudely stuck to a particular methodology that is self-defeating. So there's no undercutting refutation to the two arguments we use, and the ones that he did we responded to with regards to quantum physics and the fine-tuning response that he gave. So it's not redundant at all. Sociologically, we've shown that during the Q&A that having religiosity is a very positive thing. You're more likely to be better than an atheist. Also, I think God, especially from the Islamic point of view, gives us a sense of intellectual liberalism. It's quite shocking I'm saying this, because I'm not a liberal. But what I mean by intellectual liberalism is that it widens our horizon because we don't attribute power to the material world. So therefore, it doesn't become an obstacle to the realm of possibility of things that we could achieve in life. This is why it empowers us. And this is why we don't have a very weak-minded narrative like Michael's narrative of like making a caricature of the Quranic text. Look, it says cutting the hand of a thief. Look, it talks about apostasy. And the reason I'm saying this is because Michael, again, is falling for a fallacy because the Quran has never spoken about apostasy. The Quran not once speaks about apostasy and saying that it should be killed. So I don't know where you got that from. Maybe someone emailed you. The second point is about beating wives. The Quran never talks about beating wives in the meaning and sense that you talk about. But the point is, we need to not make a caricature of our tradition. Because, for example, if we go to the Dutch Constitution, Article 97, the most liberal nation in Europe, it says you must force this on non-Dutch nationals. If I have Michael's mindset, I would conclude all Europeans force things on non-Europeans, evil people. But as a Muslim who believes in God, and God is not redundant for me, allows me to have this intellectual liberalism, if you like, to really look at things in a nuanced way, not to make a caricature and a cartoon of the Islamic worldview. And in answer to that, where is your reference point to even judge that these things are good or morally bad in the first place? You don't even have a reference point. Your reference point is social conditioning, which according to that, if we look at studies in Belgium, that there's an organization called NAMBLA, the North American Men Boys Lovers Association, that they are trying to use UN human rights legislation for old men to make love to 3-year-old boys. But according to social consensus, his reference point for morality, that will be a good thing in 100 years.
Okay.
Glad we'll be dead by then, right?
Time's up, Michael.
Okay, the reference point that I've given for morality...
Social consensus.
Okay, the reference point that I've personally given for morality, I'm sure at least 5 times, is that the worst possible world is a world in which all sentient beings are suffering to the maximal extent for no reason. That's a formula that has currently been proposed by Sam Harris in his book, The Moral Landscape. If you want to read it for a more nuanced explanation, I would recommend that you do so. There are two ways to caricature any book, such as the Quran. One would be to say that everything in it is bad. And some people do make that argument, I don't. Another way of caricaturing it is to say that everything in it is good. That's equally a caricature. I'm doing neither of those things. What I'm saying is that it includes some things that are morally good and some things that are morally bad. That's not a caricature. With regard to the sources, the relevant verses, 4:34 is the one that talks about men being allowed to beat their wives in certain circumstances.
What does that mean?
282.
You don't even know what it means, though.
Sorry.
That's a caricature.
You need to.
No, but you can't bewitch the audience with rhetoric. You can't. That's not fair. Because this has social implications.
You can't.
No, but you have to be fair.
You had the opportunity. No. Go on, Mike.
Okay, I'm sure those of you who have copies of the Quran can look up the references and find out exactly what the wording is. 4:34 suggests that men can beat their wives under certain circumstances. 2:82 suggests that women's testimony is worth half that of a man. 4:11 suggests that women can inherit half of what a man can inherit. 5:38 suggests that you should cut off the hands of thieves. 4:89 suggests that you should kill people who are disbelievers or who leave Islam. And 9:29 suggests that you should fight non-Muslims until they are in a state of subjection. Now, I understand that there is it's a lot of counter arguments on these sort of issues about what certain Arabic words mean, and that the Arabic words can mean this, that, and the other. But there is no doubt that these type of verses exist, and that these type of verses condition people to believe that it is okay to do things such as the recent example in Bangladesh, where a 14-year-old girl was accused of having an affair with a married cousin, and was beaten up first of all by the cousin, and then as she lay in her bed trying to recover from that, there was a trial held by village elders, including the local Islamic cleric, who decided that she should be lashed as a punishment for that. She was beaten again as a result of that, and died as a result of that beating. Now, that is the type of thing that will inevitably result when you have people being able to point to phrases like this and say, that is the word of the creator of the universe. And irrespective of whether those type of things are done under that type of jungle justice scenario, or if they are done after so-called judicial processes and so-called trials, I still find them morally, I'll be strong enough to say I find them morally repugnant, not merely morally bad. I find them morally repugnant, and I think that having books that assert to be written by the creator of the universe, or that it is asserted on their behalf that they're written by the creator of the universe, makes it more likely that these type of things are going to happen.
Okay, we've come to the end of the program. I'm sure you all have questions, so I'm going to say this very slowly. If you have questions for Hamza, please write to him on info@Hamza. How do you pronounce your surname? Tzortzis.
Decide how you wish.
.com, or you can log on to www.iira.org.uk. And if you have questions for Michael, you can write to him on michael@michaelnugent.com, or you can log on to michaelnugent.com or atheist.ie. Okay? Thank you very much for being such good listeners, and please do continue the debate amongst yourselves within your communities. Don't fight, don't kill each other. Thank you very much.